Okay, my name is Glenn Scott. I'm from Big Bear Lake, California, a small rural community in Southern California. Uh, I'm a elementary school teacher. I've enjoyed the Little Big Bear library. Rural libraries are, nice because they get a little bit of personal touch to the patrons who visit there. I've always been a Stephen King fan. I've always been a Stephen King fan. It is one of my favorite books. The reason maybe not the book itself, but Stephen King in general, is that he is very honest and open. He gets to the emotions about human nature. And so I'll read a passage. After the flood, 1957, the terror, which did not end for another 28 years, if it ever did, began so far as I know or can tell with a boat made from a sheet of newspaper floating down a gutter swollen with rain. The boat bobbed, listed, righted itself again, dived bravely through treacherous whirlpools, and continued on its way through Witcham Street toward the traffic light which marked the intersection of Witcham and Jackson. The three vertical lenses on all sides of the traffic were dark this afternoon in the fall of 1957, and the houses were all dark also too. There had been steady rain for a week now, and 2 days ago the winds had come as well. Most sections of Derry had lost their power then, and it was not yet back on. A small boy in a yellow slicker and red galoshes ran cheerfully alongside the newspaper boat. The rain had not stopped, but it was finally slacking. It tapped on the yellow hood of the boy's slicker, sounding to his ears like rain on a shed roof. A comfortable, almost cozy sound. The boy in the yellow slicker was George Denborough. He was 6. His brother William, known to most of the kids at Derry Elementary School, and even to his teachers, would never have used a nickname to his face, as Stuttering Bill, was at home hacking out the last of a nasty case of influenza. That autumn of 1957, 8 months before the real horror began, and 28 years before the final showdown, Stuttering Bill was 10 years old. Bill had made the boat, beside which George now ran. He had made it, sitting up in bed, his back propped against a pile of pillows, while their mother played For Elise on the piano in the parlor, and rain swept restfully against his bedroom window. About 3/4 of the way down the block, as one headed toward the intersection in the dead traffic light, Witcham Street was blocked to motor traffic by smudged pots and 4 orange sawhorses. Stenciled across each of the horses was Derry Department of Public Works. Beyond them, the rain had spilled out of gutters clogged with branches and rocks and big sticks of autumn leaves. The water had first pried finger holes in the paving and then snatched whole greedy handfuls, all of this by the 3rd day of the rains. By noon of the 4th day, big chunks of the street surface were boating through the intersection of Jackson and Wickham, like miniature white water rafts. By that time, many people in Derry had begun to make nervous jokes about arcs. The Public Works Department had managed to keep Jackson Street open, but Wickham was impassable from the Seahorses all the way to the center of town. But everyone agreed the worst was over. The stream had crested just below its banks and in barrens, and bare inches below the concrete sides of the canal was channeled it tightly as it passed through downtown. Right now, a gang of men, Zach Dunborough, George's and Bill's father, among them, were removing the sandbags they had thrown up the day before with such panicky haste. Yesterday, overflow and expansive flood damage had seemed almost inevitable. God knew it had happened before. Flooding in 1931 had been a disaster which has cost millions of dollars and almost 24 lives. That was a long time ago, but there are still enough people around who remembered it to scare the rest. One of the flood victims had been found 25 miles east in Bucksport. The fish had eaten this unfortunate gentleman's eyes, 3 of his fingers, his penis, and most of his left foot. Clutched in what remained of his hand had been a Ford steering wheel. Now, though, the river was receding, and when the new Bangor Hydro Dam went in upstream, the river would cease to be a threat. Or so said Zach Dunborough, who worked for a Bangor Hydroelectric. As for the rest, well, future floods could take care of themselves. The thing was to get through this one, to get the power back on, and then forget it. In Derry, such forgetting of tragedy and disaster was almost an art, as Bill Denborough would come to discover in the course of time. George paused just beyond the sawhorses at the edge of a deep ravine that had been cut through the tar surface of Witcham Street. This ravine ran on almost exact diagonal. It ended on the far side of the street, roughly 40 feet further down the hill from where it now stood, on the right. He laughed aloud, the sound of solitary, childish glee, a bright runner in that gray afternoon. As a vagary of the flowing water took his paper boat into a scale model rapids which had been formed by the break in the tar. The urgent water had cut a channel which ran along the diagonal, and so his boat traveled from one side of Witcham Street to the other. The current carried it so fast that George had to sprint to keep up with it. Water sprayed out from beneath his galoshes and muddy sheets. Their buckles made a jolly jingle as George Denborough ran toward his strange death. And the feeling which filled him at the moment was a clear and simple love for his brother Bill. Love and a touch of regret that Bill couldn't be here to see this and be part of it. Of course, he would try to describe it to Bill when he got home, but he knew he wouldn't be able to make Bill see it the way Bill would have been able to make him see it. Their position had been reversed. Bill was good at reading and writing, but even at his age, George was wise enough to know that that wasn't the only reason why Bill got all A's on his report cards, or why his teachers liked his composition so well. Telling was only part of it. Bill was good at seeing. The boat nearly whistled along the diagonal channel, just a page torn from the classified section of the Derry News. But now George imagined it as a PT boat in a war movie, like the ones he sometimes saw down at the Derry Theater with Bill at Sunday matinees. A war picture with John Wayne fighting the Japs. The prow of the newspaper boat threw sprays of water to either side as it rushed along, and then it reached the gutter on the left side of Witcham Street. A fresh streamlet rushed over the break in the tar at this point, creating a very large whirlpool, and it seemed to him that the boat must be swamped and capsized. It leaned alarmingly, and then George cheered as it righted itself, turned and went racing on down toward the intersection. George sprinted to catch up. Over his head, a grim gust of October wind rattled the trees, now almost completely unburdened of their freight of colored leaves by the storm, which had been this year a reaper of the most ruthless sort.